The river ice cracked like gunfire that November morning, a sound Samuel Whitfield would hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. But that wasn't the morning that changed everything. That morning came 3 weeks later when he stood beside a different kind of death. Mary Whitfield died at 2:30 on a Thursday afternoon, her lungs finally surrendering to the consumption that had been eating her alive for 7 months. Sam held her hand as the light left her eyes, feeling the warmth drain from her fingers like water through a sieve. She tried to speak at the end, her lips forming words her breath could no longer carry. He leaned close, so close he could smell the sickness on her skin. "Promise me," she whispered, each word costing her what little strength remained. "Take care of Daniel. Don't let Robert." The sentence died unfinished. Her hand went slack in his. The room fell silent except for the wind rattling the cabin windows and the soft, confused whimpering of their 6-year-old son standing in the corner watching his mother stop breathing. Sam didn't cry. Not then. He sat there holding Mary's hand for another 20 minutes, feeling it grow cold, thinking about all the things they'd planned that would never happen now. The garden she wanted to expand next spring. The second child they'd talked about having. The life they were supposed to build together in this hard country that had just gotten infinitely harder. Daniel didn't make a sound. The boy stood against the wall, clutching the stuffed bear his mother had sewn for him 2 Christmases ago, his eyes wide and dry and utterly lost. Sam wanted to go to him to say something that would make sense of what had just happened, but he had no words. How do you explain death to a child who barely understands life? "She's gone, son," Sam finally said, his voice rough as creek gravel. "Your mama's gone." Daniel stared at him, stared at the bed, stared at the woman who would never wake up. Then he did something that broke Sam's heart more completely than Mary's death had. He nodded. Just once. A small, solemn acknowledgement from a boy who had just learned that the world could take away the people you loved most, and there wasn't a damn thing you could do to stop it. Sam was a carpenter by trade, a good one with hands that knew wood the way some men knew books. He'd built the cabin they lived in, mostly by himself with some help from his older brother Robert in the early days. Solid pine logs chinked with mud and moss. A stone fireplace that drew clean. Plank floors he'd fitted so tight you couldn't slide a knife blade between the boards. It was good work, honest work, the kind of work a man could be proud of. He'd met Mary 7 years ago in Pennsylvania at a church social his mother had dragged him to against his will. She'd been serving punch, laughing at something another woman had said, and when she looked at him, her smile had made him forget every sensible thought in his head. They'd married 3 months later. He'd promised her a good life, a home of their own children, who would grow up with clean air and open sky. Montana Territory had seemed like the place to make those promises real. Now she was dead at 26 and he was a widower at 32, and their son had stopped speaking. Not entirely at first, just less, quieter. By the second day after Mary's death, Daniel would only nod or shake his head in response to questions. By the third day, the day of the funeral, he'd gone completely silent. His mouth worked sometimes, lips forming words, but no sound came out. The doctor Sam brought in from town said it was shocked that the boy would speak again when he was ready, but looking into Daniel's eyes, Sam wasn't so sure. Those eyes had seen something break. Maybe something that couldn't be fixed. The funeral was a sparse affair. 18 people showed up, which was about right for November in Montana when the weather was already turning mean. Reverend Miller said words over the grave that Sam barely heard. The wind cut through his coat, and Daniel shivered against his side, and the whole thing felt unreal, like it was happening to someone else, and Sam was just watching from a long way off. Robert stood apart from the other mourners, his rust-colored beard catching snowflakes that had started to fall during the benediction. Sam's older brother by 6 years, built thicker and harder, with their father's square jaw and their mother's cold blue eyes. He didn't look sad exactly, more like he was waiting for something, calculating something. It made Sam uneasy in a way he couldn't quite name. After they lowered Mary into the frozen ground, after the mourners had filed past with their useless condolences and their casseroles Sam would never eat, Robert approached. He didn't offer sympathy, just stood there looking at the fresh-turned earth, at Daniel, standing silent as a stone beside his father, at the cabin, visible through the trees a quarter-mile distant. "We need to talk," Robert said, "about the cabin." Sam's stomach dropped. "What about it?" "Not here, not today." Robert's eyes flicked to Daniel, then back to Sam. "Give it 3 days. Let Mary rest proper. Then you and me will settle accounts." He walked away before Sam could ask what that meant, his boots crunching through the thin snow, leaving Sam with a sick feeling that had nothing to do with grief and everything to do with the way his brother had said the word accounts. 3 days later, Sam found out exactly what Robert meant. It was late afternoon on the third day after they'd buried Mary. The temperature had dropped to 8 below and the sky had that pale, empty look it got before a real storm. Sam was trying to get Daniel to eat something, anything, when he heard boots on the porch. Heavy boots. Purposeful. Robert didn't knock, just opened the door and walked in like he owned the place, which as it turned out, he was about to claim he did. "We need to talk," Roberts said again the same words as 3 days ago, but with more weight behind them now. "About this cabin, about this land." Sam set down the bowl of soup Daniel hadn't touched. "I'm listening." Robert pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. "You remember when you started building this place 5 years back?" "I remember. I built it with my own hands. With my help the first 2 weeks, and with money I loaned you." Robert unfolded the paper. It was yellowed, creased, covered in his own cramped handwriting. $200 for timber, another 50 for nails and hardware. "You said you'd pay me back after your first winter's work. But you never did." Sam's mouth went dry. It was true. He'd meant to pay it back, had planned to, but there'd always been something else. The wedding, getting Mary settled, the hard winter when work dried up, then Daniel coming along, then Mary getting sick. The debt had slipped further and further back in his mind until he'd almost forgotten it existed. "I was going to pay you," Sam said, "this spring after I sold the lumber from that stand of pine on the north section. That's the other problem." Robert smoothed the paper on the table. "The land deed. It's in the name Whitfield, but it doesn't specify which Whitfield. According to Montana territory law, when ownership's ambiguous like that, it defaults to the eldest male heir of the family line." "That's horse shit." Sam stood up, hands clenching. "I filed the claim. I built the cabin. This is my land." "Not according to Mr. Hartley." Robert gestured toward the door where Sam now noticed a thin man in a dark suit standing just outside on the porch. The town lawyer. "I asked him to come along, professional courtesy, so there's no confusion." Hartley stepped inside, brushing snow from his shoulders. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd rather be anywhere else, but his voice was steady when he spoke. "I'm afraid your brother's right, Mr. Whitfield. The deed as written is legally ambiguous. Combined with the outstanding debt and the lack of any contrary documentation, the law would favor Mr. Robert Whitfield's claim to the property." The room tilted. Sam gripped the edge of the table. "You can't do this. My wife just died, my son." "I'm not heartless," Robert cut in, though his face suggested otherwise. "The boy can stay. Catherine could use help around our place. Daniel can work for his keep, do chores, earn his way, but you need to leave." Sam looked at Daniel. The boy sat in his chair by the fire, the stuffed bear in his lap, watching this exchange with those wide, silent eyes. Understanding more than any 6-year-old should have to understand. "I'm not leaving my son to be your servant." "Then you're both out." Robert's voice went flat, hard. "You have until sundown to pack what you can carry. Food, clothes, tools I didn't pay for. The cabin stays, the land stays, everything else that's nailed down or too heavy to lift, that stays too." "Robert, please." Sam hated the pleading note in his voice, but he couldn't stop it. "It's November. There's a storm coming. Where am I supposed to take a 6-year-old boy?" "That's not my concern." Robert refolded the debt paper and tucked it back in his coat. "You should have thought about that before you skipped out on paying what you owed. I've been patient. I've been fair. But patience runs out, and Mary's death doesn't change the law." Hartley cleared his throat. "If you want to contest this, Mr. Whitfield, you could file an appeal with the territorial court, but that would take months and you'd need to pay a retainer I doubt you have. And honestly, based on the documentation, I don't think you'd win." Sam wanted to hit something, wanted to grab Robert by his smug throat and throw him out of the cabin Sam had built with his own sweat and blood. But he looked at Daniel again, at his son, sitting there so small and quiet and fragile, and he knew fighting would only make this worse. "Tomorrow morning," Sam said, forcing the words through clenched teeth. "Give us until tomorrow morning. Sundown today." Robert moved toward the door. I want to move our things in before the storm hits. You've got maybe 4 hours of daylight left. I suggest you use them." He left. Hartley followed with an apologetic glance Sam didn't acknowledge. The door closed. The cabin fell silent except for the wind picking up outside and the crackle of the fire and the sound of Sam's heart breaking for the second time in 3 days. Daniel climbed down from his chair and walked to Sam, looked up at him, opened his mouth like he was going to speak, but no words came. Instead, he just raised his arms, asking without words to be held. Sam picked him up, felt the small body pressed against his chest, and finally let himself cry. They packed in silence. Sam filled 2 canvas rucksacks with everything he could think of that might keep them alive. Clothes for both of them, a cook pot, 2 tin plates, spoons, the wool blanket from Daniel's bed, a small bag of flour, dried venison, a box of matches, salt, coffee. His carpentry tools saw hammer chisels plain because a man without tools was a man without future. A hunting knife. The rifle would have been useful, but Robert had loaned him that too, damn him. There were things he wanted to take that he couldn't. The rocking chair Mary had loved, the quilt her mother had made, the photograph of their wedding day in its wooden frame. Robert would get all of it, would sit in this cabin Sam had built and use things Sam had paid for with years of his life, and there wasn't a goddamn thing Sam could do about it. Daniel packed his own small bag without being asked. The stuffed bear, a wooden horse Sam had carved for him, a picture book Mary used to read to him at bedtime. He moved through the cabin, touching things, the wall beside his bed, the table where they ate meals, the stones of the fireplace, saying goodbye the only way he could. When the bags were full, Sam knelt in front of his son. "I need you to listen to me, Daniel. We're going somewhere else now. I don't know where yet, but I promise you I'm going to find us a place to live, a place that's safe and warm. Can you be brave for me?" Daniel nodded, just once, solemn as a judge. "That's my boy." Sam hoisted Daniel onto his back, piggyback style, and settled the heavier rucksack on his own shoulders. The smaller one he strapped to Daniel's chest, distributing the weight. Together, they probably carried 80 pounds of gear. It should have been more. They'd need more to survive a Montana winter, but it was all they could manage. Robert wasn't there to watch them leave. Neither was Catherine. The cabin stood empty as Sam walked away from it, Daniel's arms wrapped around his neck, heading north into the gathering dusk because Arth was away from town and away from people and away from anyone who might look at them with pity or judgment. The snow started falling heavier as they walked, fat flakes that stuck to everything and turned the world white. Sam followed a game trail he knew heading toward the high country, thinking maybe he could find an abandoned line shack or a cave or something, anything that would give them shelter until he figured out what to do next. After an hour, Daniel whispered against his ear, so quiet Sam almost missed it. "Papa, I'm cold." The first words his son had spoken in 3 days, and they broke Sam's heart all over again. "I know, buddy, I know. We'll find somewhere warm soon, I promise." But he was lying. He had no idea where they were going. The temperature was dropping fast, and the snow was getting thicker, and visibility was down to maybe 20 feet. He was walking blind into wilderness with a 6-year-old on his back and maybe 4 hours before full dark, and he didn't have a plan beyond putting one foot in front of the other and hoping something would present itself. 3 hours later, nothing had presented itself except more snow and more cold and the growing certainty that he'd made a terrible mistake. Sam's legs were shaking. His breath came in ragged gasps. Daniel's weight on his back felt like it had doubled, and the rucksack straps were cutting grooves in his shoulders, even through his coat. He couldn't feel his feet anymore. The game trail had disappeared under a foot of fresh snow, and he was just pushing through drifts now, hoping he was still heading generally north, though for all he knew he was walking in circles. Daniel had stopped shivering. That was bad. Sam knew that was bad. When you stopped shivering, it meant your body was giving up, shutting down, prioritizing your core, and abandoning your extremities. The boy's breathing against his neck was shallow and slow. "Stay with me, Daniel," Sam said through numb lips. "Stay awake. Talk to me." But Daniel didn't talk. Just a small sound, not quite a whimper, that might have been agreement or might have been the beginning of goodbye. Sam tried to walk faster, but his boot caught on something under the snow, a root of rock he never knew. His leg buckled. He pitched forward. Daniel tumbled off his back with a cry. the first real sound of fear Sam had heard from him since Mary died, and they both went down hard into the snow. Sam tried to get up. His hands wouldn't work right. His legs felt like someone else's legs, distant and unresponsive. He managed to roll onto his side and saw Daniel lying 3 feet away, the little boy crying now, real tears freezing on his cheeks, and Sam thought, this is how it ends. This is how we die. I brought my son out here into the snow to die because I was too proud to leave him with Robert, too stupid to have a real plan. And now this 6-year-old boy is going to freeze to death because his father was an idiot. I'm sorry, Sam whispered. Not sure if he was talking to Daniel or Mary or God or all three. I'm so sorry. He closed his eyes. The snow felt warm now, soft as a feather bed. He could just rest here a minute. Just a minute. Then he'd get up and carry Daniel somewhere safe. Just needed a minute. A hand gripped his shoulder, shook him. Hard. Sam's eyes opened. A face loomed over him, dark against the white sky. Old. Weathered as canyon rock. Long gray hair and braids that hung past shoulders wrapped in a buffalo hide robe. You planning to die here with your The voice was deep accented, speaking English with the careful precision of someone for whom it wasn't a first language. Sam tried to answer, but his mouth wouldn't work. The old man shook him again. Answer me, you want to die? No. Sam managed to push the word out. Help him. Please help my son. The old man turned, looked at Daniel still crying in the snow, then back to Sam. Something shifted in his dark eyes. A decision being made. Get up, both of you, follow me. Can't, Sam said. Can't move. You can, you will, because that boy needs you to. The old man grabbed Sam's arm and hauled him to his feet with surprising strength. Pick up your son. Walk, it's not far. Sam stumbled to Daniel, somehow got the boy up and into his arms. Daniel buried his face against Sam's chest, shaking violently. Now the shivering returned, which was good, meant his body hadn't given up yet. The old man picked up both rucksacks like they weighed nothing and started walking. Not north, east, into the trees. Sam followed because he had no choice, because this stranger was the only hope they had, putting one foot in front of the other through sheer force of will and the knowledge that if he stopped now, Daniel would die. 400 yards through the trees. 400 yards that felt like 4 miles. Then the old man stopped in front of what looked like a low mound of snow. He brushed away the snow to reveal a structure made of bent willow branches covered in layers of bark and hide. A wickiup, Sam realized dimly, a Blackfoot dwelling. The old man pulled aside a hide flap. Inside. Sam didn't question it. He ducked through the low entrance into warmth and firelight and the smell of wood smoke and sage. The interior was small, maybe 8 feet across, but it felt like heaven. A fire burned in a central pit. Furs and blankets covered the ground. The heat hit Sam like a physical thing, and he almost collapsed again, but the old man caught him and guided him to sit. Put the boy here, close to the fire. Sam lowered Daniel onto a thick buffalo robe. The boy's lips were blue, and his whole body shook, but his eyes were open, aware. The old man draped another robe over him, then filled a wooden bowl from a pot hanging over the fire. Make him drink this, slowly. Sam held the bowl to Daniel's lips. Some kind of broth, rich and hot, and smelling faintly of meat and herbs. Daniel sipped, coughed, sipped again. Color started returning to his cheeks. The old man watched them for a long moment, his face unreadable in the firelight. Then he spoke. You're the man whose wife died 3 days ago. Consumption. It wasn't a question. Sam nodded anyway, surprised. How did you know? I know most things that happen in this valley. White people think they're alone out here, but they're not. I watch. He settled himself on the far side of the fire. Your brother threw you out. Took your cabin. Yes. Where were you going into the high country with winter coming and a child on your back? I didn't know where to go. Sam pulled Daniel closer, feeling the boy's shivering start to ease. I just knew I couldn't leave him there. Couldn't let Robert turn him into a servant. The old man nodded slowly. A man who doesn't abandon his child. That's good. That's worth saving. They sat in silence for a while. Sam fed Daniel more broth until the boy's eyes started to droop. Exhaustion taking over now that the immediate danger had passed. Sam laid him down on the buffalo robe and pulled the covering up to his chin. Sleep, buddy, Sam whispered. You're safe now. Daniel's eyes fluttered closed. Within seconds, his breathing had deepened into real sleep, the first peaceful sleep he'd had since his mother died. Sam looked across the fire at the old man who'd saved them. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you for this, but thank you." "My name is Joseph Redstone." The old man fed another stick to the fire. "I'm Blackfoot, 71 winters. I've lived in this valley for 40 years, since before the white men came in numbers." "Sam Whitfield, and that's Daniel. He's 6. "I know who you are." Joseph's eyes reflected the firelight. "I watched you build that cabin 5 years ago. Watched you work. You're good with wood. Good with your hands. You know how to make things." "I'm a carpenter. Was a carpenter." Sam rubbed his face. "Don't know what I am now." "You're a father. That's what matters." Joseph paused. "Why didn't the boy speak when I found you only cried?" Before that, he was quiet. "He hasn't talked since his mother died. Doctor says it's shock." Joseph made a sound that might have been agreement or skepticism. "Words come back when they're ready. The boy understands. Yes, he hears you. Yes. Then he'll speak again, when he feels safe." Joseph poked at the fire. "You can't go back to your brother's cabin. You know this." "I know. You need shelter, food, a way to survive winter. You have any ideas?" Sam shook his head. "None that don't involve begging for work in town or throwing myself on the charity of people who already think I'm a failure." "White people build bad houses," Joseph said, apparently changing the subject. "Big houses, tall. They cut down whole forests to make boxes that leak heat like sieves. Then they burn more forest to stay warm inside their leaky boxes. It's stupid." Despite everything, Sam almost smiled. "I suppose it is. My people built different, smarter." Joseph gestured at the wickiup around them. "This shelter, it's for summer, for moving. Easy to pack, easy to carry. But in winter, when the cold came down from the mountains, we didn't live in teepees. We went into the earth." "Into the earth," Sam frowned. "Like a cave. Like a house, underground house, earth lodge, some call it. You dig into a hillside, not down into. Angle it so water drains out. Go deep enough 4 feet below where the ground freezes. Down there, the earth is always the same temperature, 52 degrees. Summer, winter doesn't matter. The earth keeps its heat." Sam's carpenter mind started working despite his exhaustion. 4 feet down, that'd be stable. Clay soil would hold without caving. But how do you keep it from getting damp and ventilation? "I'll teach you." Joseph looked at him with an intensity that was almost uncomfortable. "I'll show you where to build, how to build, but you have to do the work. My hands are too old for digging." "Why would you help me? You don't know me." Joseph was quiet for a long time. The fire crackled. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, but inside the wickiup, it was warm and still. 40 years ago, Joseph finally said, "I had a son. His name was William. His mother was white woman, a trader's daughter. When William was 8 years old, his mother died of fever. Her family came. They said I was savage, said a half-breed boy needed to be raised civilized. They took William away from me. I tried to fight, but the law was on their side. The law is always on their side." He looked across the fire at Sam, and his eyes were ancient with old grief. "I never saw my son again. Don't know if he's alive or dead. Don't know if he remembers me. That hole in my chest, it never healed." Joseph nodded toward Daniel sleeping peacefully by the fire. "When I saw you in the snow with that boy on your back, I knew what you were. You're a father who didn't abandon his child when it would have been easier, who chose the hard path because it was the right path. That's worth saving. That's worth teaching." Sam's throat tightened. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll learn. Say you'll work. Say you'll build a home for that boy that no one can take from you." Joseph's voice hardened. "Not a wooden cabin that depends on claims and papers and the whims of territorial law. A home in the earth, invisible to people who would steal it, permanent as the mountain itself." Sam looked at Daniel, at his son sleeping safe and warm for the first time in days. Thought about Robert in the cabin Sam had built, using Sam's things, living Sam's life. Thought about the cold and the snow, and the impossibility of surviving winter without shelter. "Teach me," he said, "please, teach me how to build it." Joseph smiled, and it transformed his weathered face. "We start tomorrow. First light, tonight you sleep, eat, get your strength back. because the work will be hard and there's no time to waste. Winter's coming first and the earth doesn't care if you're ready or not. That night, Sam lay next to Daniel listening to his son's steady breathing, and for the first time since Mary died, he felt something other than despair. Not hope exactly, not yet, but maybe the possibility of hope, the sense that there might be a path forward after all, even if it led underground. Outside, the storm raged on, but inside the wickiup, they were safe. Joseph sat by the fire, keeping watch, and Sam drifted into sleep, thinking about earth and stone and the strange twist of fate that had brought them to this moment. Daniel stirred in his sleep and moved closer to his father's warmth. His lips moved, forming words and dreams that he couldn't yet speak awake. Sam put his arm around the boy and held him close. They'd lost everything. Home security, the life they'd known. But they were alive. They were together. And tomorrow they would start building something new. Something no one could take away. Morning came cold and clear, the kind of crystalline dawn that follows a hard snow. Sam woke to find Joseph already up tending a small fire and heating something in a clay pot that smelled of wild herbs and dried meat. Daniel still slept buried under the buffalo robe, his breathing deep and even. The first real rest he'd had since Mary died. Joseph looked up as Sam stirred. The boy needs to sleep more. You and I will go to look at the land, see where you'll build. Sam glanced at Daniel, hesitant to leave him. He's safe here, Joseph said, reading his thoughts. The fire will keep. I'll leave food within reach. We won't go far. They stepped out into a world transformed. 2 feet of fresh snow covered everything, brilliant white under a pale blue sky. The air was so cold it hurt to breathe. Joseph moved through it like he was born to it, following a path Sam couldn't see, heading upslope through stands of pine and aspen. After 20 minutes, they emerged onto a south-facing hillside. Joseph stopped surveying the slope with the practiced eye of someone who'd read land all his life. Here, he said, this is where you build. Sam looked around, trying to see what Joseph saw. Just looked like a hillside to him. Snow-covered scrub and rock-sparse trees, nothing obviously special. Why here, south-facing? Sun hits it all day, even in deep winter. Warms the earth, melts snow before it can pile too deep. Joseph pointed to the angle of the slope. See how it drops steep enough to shed water. Not so steep you can't dig stable. And look at the soil. He kicked away snow, exposing dark earth beneath. Bent down and grabbed a handful, squeezed it. When he opened his hand, the earth held its shape. Clay, mixed with stone. This is good soil. Strong. It'll hold the shape you cut. Won't collapse like sand. Won't get soupy like pure clay when it's wet. He tossed the handful aside. And we're high enough that groundwater won't be a problem. You dig here, you'll stay dry. Sam knelt and felt the earth himself. His carpenter's mind was already working, translating Joseph's observations into practical engineering. Load-bearing walls, drainage angles, structural integrity. It was building just with earth instead of wood. The principles were the same. How deep? He asked. 4 feet into the hillside. That puts you below the frost line. Down there, earth stays 52 degrees year-round. Doesn't freeze in winter. Doesn't heat up in summer. Steady, reliable. Joseph drew in the snow with a stick, sketching a rough cross-section. You don't dig down into the ground. You dig into the hill. Angle your entrance like this, see slopes up slightly. Water runs out instead of pooling inside. And the ceiling, if I'm 4 feet in, that's a lot of earth pressing down. How do I keep it from caving? Make it curved, like this. Joseph drew an arc. Curve distributes weight. White people always build flat ceilings, flat walls, everything square. Square is weak. Nature doesn't make squares. Look at bird nest, beaver lodge, turtle shell. Everything curves. Curve is strong. Sam studied the sketch, then looked at the hillside, then back at the sketch. His hands itched for tools. For the first time since Mary died, he felt something like purpose stirring in his chest. When do we start? Today, now, every day counts. Big storm coming. Joseph stood brushing snow from his leggings. Maybe 2 weeks, maybe 3. When it comes, it'll be bad. Worst in 20 years. I can feel it in my bones. They walked back to the wickiup and found Daniel awake eating dried venison Joseph had left for him. The boy looked up when Sam entered, and something in his eyes was different. Still grieving, but not quite as lost as before. We're going to build a house, buddy, Sam said, kneeling beside him. A different kind of house, underground. Mr. Redstone is going to teach us. You think you can help? Daniel nodded, solemn, serious. A small hand reached out and gripped Sam's sleeve. I need you to be brave a little longer, Sam said quietly. Can you do that for me? Another nod. Daniel's mouth opened like he wanted to speak, but no words came. Instead, he just held tighter to Sam's sleeve. That's okay, Sam said. Words will come back when they're ready. Right now, I just need you with me. That's enough. Joseph watched this exchange with an expression Sam couldn't quite read. Then he gathered tools, a shovel, a pickaxe, a curved blade for scraping earth. He handed the shovel to Sam. We start with the entrance. Dig into the hillside at an angle, 3 feet wide, 8 feet deep. That's your tunnel. Once you're in far enough, you expand into your main room. For 3 weeks, Sam dug, every day from first light until his hands were too numb and his back too broken to continue. Daniel stayed close, helping in small ways, carrying stones, dragging away brush, sitting nearby, and watching his father work with those solemn, silent eyes. The first 3 days were the hardest. The top 6 inches of earth were frozen solid. Sam had to build fires on the ground, let them burn for hours to thaw the soil in, then shovel away the warmed earth before it froze again. Brutal, tedious work. His hands blistered, then bled, then calloused over. His shoulders ached from swinging the pickaxe. His back screamed from bending and lifting. Joseph came every day, never touched a shovel, but taught constantly. How to read the earth, testing its consistency with a stick driven deep. How to angle the cut so water would drain. How to recognize clay versus sandy soil, stable ground versus unstable. How to shore up weak spots with stones fitted tight. You're thinking like a carpenter, Joseph observed on the 4th day watching Sam work. That's good. Wood and earth, they're different materials, but same principles. You understand structure, load-bearing, stress points. You'll figure this out. By the end of the first week, Sam had carved 8 feet into the hillside. A tunnel narrow and dark, barely wide enough for his shoulders. Daniel would crawl in sometimes exploring, and his small voice would echo back, Papa, it's like a cave. The first words he'd spoken since the funeral. Sam almost cried. Week 2, Sam began expanding the main chamber. This was trickier work. He had to dig wider while maintaining the structural integrity of the earth above. Joseph showed him how to create a curved ceiling, using bent willow branches as temporary supports, carving the earth to match their arc. Dome shape, Joseph explained. Weight presses down, but curve sends that weight outward to the walls, then down into the ground. Even distribution. Very strong. You could put a horse on top of this and it wouldn't collapse. Sam worked methodically, removing earth one shovelful at a time, smoothing the walls with the flat of his blade. He carved small niches into the walls for storage, made the main chamber 10 feet wide and 12 feet deep, with the ceiling rising to 8 feet at the center before curving down to 6 feet at the edges. Daniel helped more as the work progressed. The boy had good hands, careful and precise. He learned to sort stones by size and shape, stacking them for later use. Learned to pack clay into cracks and weak spots. Learned to test the walls the way Joseph had taught, driving a stick in and feeling for resistance. On the 13th day, disaster struck. Sam was working on the north wall when he heard a crack. A spiderweb of fractures spread across the clay surface. He barely had time to yell, "Get back," before a section of wall the size of a door collapsed inward, burying his legs in loose earth. Daniel screamed, the first real sound of fear since the night in the snow. Joseph, who'd been outside gathering firewood, came running. Together, they dug Sam out, his legs bruised but not broken. The collapsed section had created a gap that compromised the whole north wall's stability. Sam sat in the snow, breathing hard, staring at the damage. 3 days of work destroyed in 3 seconds. I failed, he said. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to kill us both trying to build this thing. Joseph knelt beside him. You hit a weak layer, sandy soil hidden in the clay. It happens. Now you know to test more carefully. Now you know what instability looks like. He gripped Sam's shoulder. Failure is how you learn. My people, we've had earth lodges collapse. We've made mistakes. That's why we know what works now, because our grandfathers failed and learned. I don't have time for trial and error. Winter's coming. Then you fix this smart, not fast. You pack that gap with stones. You wet clay, mix it with grass fibers for strength, seal every crack. You make it stronger than it was before. Joseph's eyes were hard. Or you quit, give up, take the boy back to town, beg for work, live in someone's barn. That's always an option. Sam looked at Daniel. His son stood a few feet away, snow-covered and shaking, watching his father with eyes that held a question. Are you going to quit? No, Sam said. We're not quitting. Show me how to fix it. They spent 2 days reinforcing the north wall. Sam learned to mix clay with dried grass, creating a primitive concrete that was stronger than earth alone. Learned to fit stones so tight that not even a knife blade could slide between them. When they finished, that section was the strongest part of the whole structure. Week 3, the finishing work. Sam built the fire pit near the entrance, lining it with heat-resistant stones he'd gathered from a creek bed half a mile away. He created a chimney using stacked flat stones, building it to rise just 2 feet above ground level outside so it wouldn't get buried in snow. The ventilation was critical. Joseph was adamant about this. Bad air kills as sure as cold. You need fresh air coming in smoke, going out constant movement. They created a draft system. Cold air entered through the tunnel entrance, warmed as it passed the living space, rose naturally and exited through the chimney. Simple physics, but it had to be calibrated just right, or the fire would either choke out or pull all the heat from the room. For the door, Sam built a frame from bent willow, covered it with deer hide he'd traded for in town, using the last of his money. Double layer with 6 inches of dead air space between. Joseph nodded approval. Air doesn't move heat. Dead air is best insulation there is. On the 21st day, Sam laid the floor. He covered the earth with 6 inches of dried grass he and Daniel had gathered from a meadow before the snow buried it completely. Over the grass, he placed flat stones, fitting them like puzzle pieces, until he had a surface that was level and solid. The stones would absorb heat from the fire and radiate it back through the night. November 30th, Sam carried their belongings into the earth lodge for the first time. The temperature outside was 18 below zero. Inside the unheated chamber, it was already 50 degrees just from the earth's natural warmth. When he lit the first fire in the pit, the temperature climbed to 65 within an hour. Daniel stood in the center of the space, turning slowly, taking it all in. The curved walls Sam had smoothed to a polish. The stone floor, the small niches carved for storage, already holding their meager possessions. The firelight dancing on clay surfaces, warm and alive. The boy walked to his father and wrapped both arms around Sam's waist, pressed his face against Sam's chest, and whispered, barely audible, "It's warm, Papa, warmer than the old house." Sam's vision blurred. He picked Daniel up, held him close. "Yeah, buddy, it is, and it's ours. Nobody can take this from us. Nobody even knows it's here." Joseph stood in the entrance watching them. When Sam looked over, the old man nodded once, a gesture of respect, of completion. "You did good work," Joseph said. "Fast work, smart work. The earth will hold you now, keep you safe." He paused. "But the real test is still coming. The big storm. When it hits, you'll know if you built well." That night, Sam and Daniel slept underground for the first time. The silence was profound, total, broken only by the crackle of the fire and their own breathing. Outside, the wind howled and the temperature dropped to 20 below. But inside, they were warm, safe, hidden from the world in a way that felt both vulnerable and invulnerable at once. Daniel fell asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's work. Sam lay awake longer, listening to the earth around them. It was alive in a way wood never was. He could feel it breathing, holding them, keeping the cold at bay, not through burning fuel, but through simple thermal mass. 52 degrees, constant and reliable, they asking nothing in return. He thought about Mary, wished she could see this. Wished she could know that he'd found a way to keep their son safe. Wished a lot of things that wishing couldn't change. The first week of December brought a pattern to their days. Sam and Daniel would wake at dawn, make breakfast over the fire, oatmeal, or sometimes venison if Joseph brought meat. Daniel was talking more now, not constantly, but no longer silent. Small observations, questions. Once unprompted, "Mama would have liked it here. It's cozy." Sam had to turn away so the boy wouldn't see his face. They spent mornings improving the earth lodge. Sam built shelves into the wall niches, created a better ventilation hood over the fire, carved a second smaller chamber off the main room for food storage, where the temperature stayed even cooler, perfect for preserving meat. Daniel helped with everything, learning carpentry and earthworking simultaneously, his small hands surprisingly skilled. Afternoons, they set snares for rabbits following Joseph's instruction. The first 3 days, they caught nothing. On the fourth day, Daniel ran back to the earth lodge shouting, "Papa, Papa, we got one. A fat snowshoe hare caught clean." Sam showed Daniel how to skin it, how to scrape the hide clean, how to smoke the meat for preservation. The boy watched everything with fierce concentration, memorizing each step. Joseph visited most days, never staying long, but always teaching. How to read weather signs, how to find water under snow, how to recognize the tracks of every animal in the territory. Stories about his people, about the old ways, told in that deep voice while they sat around the fire. One evening, Daniel asked, "Mr. Redstone, why do you live alone? Don't you have family?" Joseph was quiet for a long moment. "I had a son once, but he was taken from me. Now I'm old and my people are far away on the reservation. This valley is my home, has been for 40 years. I'll die here." "You won't die," Daniel said with the certainty of a child who'd recently learned what death meant and didn't like it. "You're too strong." Joseph smiled, and it was odd and warm at the same time. "Everyone dies, little one. But maybe not today." He looked at Sam. "There's something I want to give you before the big storm comes." He reached into a leather pouch at his belt and withdrew a smaller bag made of soft deerskin. Opened it carefully. Inside were seeds, dozens of different kinds, some Sam recognized and some he didn't. "These seeds have been kept by my family for 7 generations, Joseph said. Wild turnip, prairie onion, sunchoke, plants that grow in this land that fed my people before the buffalo died." He pressed the bag into Sam's hands. "Next spring you plant these. Teach the boy how to tend them. When they grow, you save some seeds for the next year. Keep the line going." "Joseph, I can't take this. These are your family's. I have no family to give them to. No children, no grandchildren." Joseph's voice was firm. "But you do. The boy will plant them. His children will plant them. That's what matters. Seeds need to grow, not die in an old man's pouch." Sam looked down at the bag in his hands, felt the weight of 7 generations. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll plant them. Say you'll teach Daniel. Say the knowledge won't die." Joseph's eyes reflected firelight. "That's all any of us can do. Pass on what we know. Make sure it survives us." "I will, I promise." Joseph nodded, satisfied. Then he stood, wrapped his buffalo robe tighter. "The storm is very close now. 3 days, maybe 4. When it comes, stay inside. Don't open the door for anything. Don't try to go out. The wind will try to trick you, make sounds like voices calling for help. Don't listen." "What kind of storm makes sounds like voices?" Sam asked. "The kind that kills people who listen." Joseph moved to the entrance. "I'll go back to my wiki up now. Won't see you again until after the storm passes, if I survive it." "You will," Daniel said. "You have to." Joseph looked at the boy, and something in his weathered face softened. He reached out and placed one hand on Daniel's head. A blessing maybe, or just an old man's affection for a child who reminded him of what he'd lost. "You're a good boy," Joseph said. "Take care of your father. He needs you more than you know." Then he was gone, disappearing into the early December dusk, and Sam was left with the uneasy feeling that Joseph knew something he wasn't saying. Something about the storm. Something about what was coming. That night, Daniel asked, "Papa, are you scared of the storm?" Sam considered, lying, decided against it. "A little, but we built strong. The earth will protect us." Mr. Redstone said the wind might sound like voices. "It's just wind, buddy, just noise. Nothing that can hurt us if we stay inside." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then, "I miss Mama." "I know, me too." "Do you think she knows we're okay? That we have a house now?" Sam pulled his son close. "Yeah, I think she knows. And I think she's proud of you, of how brave you've been." Daniel fell asleep in his arms, and Sam sat there in the warm earth lodge, in the home he'd built with his own hands and Joseph's wisdom, and thought about storms and voices and the strange path that had led them here. 3 weeks ago, he'd been a broken man walking into the snow to die. Now he was a father with a home and a purpose and a chance at survival. The seeds Joseph had given him sat in their pouch on a stone shelf. 7 generations of knowledge waiting for spring, waiting for Daniel to learn, waiting to become part of a legacy Sam was only beginning to understand. Outside, the temperature had dropped to 22 below, but inside their earth lodge, the fire burned steady and the walls held the heat, and father and son slept in safety wrapped in the arms of the living earth. The storm was coming. Joseph had promised that, but they were ready. They had to be, because there was nowhere else to go, no backup plan, no second chance. This underground room carved from a Montana hillside was all they had, and somehow, impossibly, it was enough. The storm announced itself with silence. On the morning of January 15th, Sam woke to an absence of sound so profound it felt like the world had stopped breathing. No wind, no bird calls, nothing. The air inside the Earth Lodge felt heavy pressurized, like the moment before lightning strikes. Daniel felt it too. "Papa, something's wrong." Sam climbed out through the tunnel entrance and stood on the hillside. The sky was a pale, sickly yellow. The temperature had risen overnight from -15 to almost 30 degrees. Warm air before a storm, the most dangerous kind. He could see his breath, despite the relative warmth, watch it hang in the still air like smoke. To the northwest, clouds were building. Not normal clouds. These were massive, dark, roiling things that seemed to devour the horizon as they came. Sam had seen storms before, grown up with Montana weather, but he'd never seen anything like this. Joseph appeared from the trees below, moving faster than Sam had seen him move in weeks. The old man's face was grim. "It's here today, maybe tonight." Joseph gripped Sam's shoulder. "I came to help you prepare. We don't have much time." They worked fast. Joseph helped Sam stack extra firewood inside the Earth Lodge, 12 bundles of dry pine that would burn clean and hot. They filled every container they had with water from the creek, knowing the stream would freeze solid once the real cold hit. They checked the chimney, cleared snow from around its base, made sure the draft was pulling strong. "Food?" Joseph asked. "Enough for a week, maybe more if we're careful." "Make it 2 weeks. This storm, it won't be quick." Joseph examined the door, the double layer of hide Sam had built. He nodded approval. "Good. Keep both layers closed once it starts. The dead air between them will hold heat." Daniel emerged from the Earth Lodge, his arms full of the rabbit furs he'd been scraping and curing. "Mr. Redstone, are you staying with us?" Joseph knelt to the boy's level. "No, little one, I have my own shelter, my own preparations. I've survived 60 winters. I'll survive this one." "But what if you don't?" Daniel's voice was small. "What if something happens? Then I'll die an old man who lived a long life. That's not a bad thing." Joseph touched the boy's cheek. "But I don't plan to die yet. Too much left to teach you. Come spring, you and your father are going to plant those seeds I gave you. I need to be here to make sure you do it right." Joseph stood, looked at Sam. "When the storm hits, you'll hear things. Sounds that don't make sense. Maybe voices calling your name. Maybe crying like someone's hurt. Don't open the door. Don't even look outside. Those sounds, they're not real. Just wind, playing tricks. You understand?" "I understand." "Do you?" Joseph's eyes were intense. "Because men have died going out to help what they thought was someone in trouble, found frozen 100 yards from their door because they listened to the wind's lies." "I won't open the door," Sam said firmly. "I promise." Joseph nodded. He turned to leave, then paused. "If I don't come back after the storm passes, my wiki up is yours. Everything in it. Use what you need." "Joseph, don't." "I'm 71 years old, Sam. Every day past 60 is borrowed time." "I'm not being morbid. I'm being practical." He smiled, and it transformed his weathered face into something almost young. "But I'm tough. Probably outlive both of you out of pure stubbornness." He walked away down the slope, his buffalo robe pulled tight, becoming a dark shape against the white landscape until the trees swallowed him completely. Daniel stood beside Sam, watching until Joseph disappeared. "He'll be okay, right, Papa?" "Yeah, buddy, he's the toughest man I know." And the storm began at 6:30 that evening. Not gradually, all at once. The wind went from 0 to 40 miles per hour in what felt like seconds, howling down from the mountains like a living thing with rage in its throat. Snow followed immediately, not falling, but driving horizontally billions of ice particles moving so fast they sounded like sand against stone. Sam sealed the second high door and pulled Daniel close to the fire. The temperature outside was dropping fast. He could feel it even through 4 feet of earth, a malevolent cold pressing in from all sides. But inside their lodge, the fire burned steady, and the walls held their heat, and they were safe. "Tell me a story, Papa," Daniel said, settling against Sam's side. So Sam told stories about his own childhood in Pennsylvania, about the first time he'd used a saw, about meeting Daniel's mother at that church social. He talked until his voice was hoarse, filling the warm underground space with words and memories, keeping the darkness at bay with sound. At 2 in the morning, they heard the first voice, faint, distant, muffled by earth and wind, but definitely a voice, a woman's voice. Samuel, please, I'm cold, let me in." Daniel sat bolt upright. "Papa, did you hear that?" Sam's blood went cold. The voice had sounded like Mary, exactly like Mary calling to him the way she used to when she wanted him to come inside from working. It couldn't be Mary. Mary was dead, buried in frozen ground 3 months now. But God, it sounded like her. "It's not real," Sam said as much to himself as to Daniel. "Remember what Joseph said, the wind makes sounds, tricks us. But what if someone really needs help? They don't. Nobody would be out there. It's just wind." The voice came again. "Samuel, please, I'm so cold. Daniel needs me. Let me in." Daniel's face crumpled. "Mama, no." Sam grabbed his son's shoulders, made the boy look at him. "That's not your mama. Your mama's gone. That's wind, just wind. We don't open the door. We promised Joseph." "But what if?" "No what ifs." Sam pulled Daniel into his lap, held him tight. "We stay here. We stay safe. That's all that matters." The voice continued for 10 more minutes, sometimes pleading, sometimes angry, sometimes just Mary's voice saying Daniel's name over and over. Sam sat there, shaking arms wrapped around his son, forcing himself not to move, not to respond, not to believe the impossible thing his ears were telling him. Then, as suddenly as it started, the voice stopped. Just wind remained, just the howl of the storm. Daniel cried quietly against Sam's chest. Sam let him stroking his son's hair, murmuring reassurances that felt hollow in his own mouth. Because part of him, the part that missed Mary so desperately, it felt like a physical wound part of him had wanted to believe. Had wanted to open that door and find her standing there, somehow alive, somehow real, somehow returned to them. But he hadn't, and they were still safe. And that would have to be enough. Day 2 of the storm. The wind had increased to what Sam estimated was 60 or 70 miles per hour, a constant scream that even 4 feet of earth couldn't completely muffle. The temperature outside had dropped to 38 below zero. The chimney kept trying to ice over. Sam had to push snow out of it every few hours using a long pole, dangerous work that required opening the inner door and working through the tunnel while frigid air poured in. Daniel helped where he could, tending the fire, rationing their food, reading from the Bible by firelight, the only book they own, his small voice steady as he worked through passages he'd memorized. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures." Sam listened and thought about pastures buried under 6 feet of snow, about shepherds and sheep and the fragility of everything living. On the second night, the sounds came again. Not Mary this time, a man's voice. "Robert." "Sam, you idiot, open up. I'm freezing out here. I'm sorry. Okay, I'm sorry for everything, please. Brother, don't let me die." Sam's jaw clenched, even knowing it wasn't real, even certain this was just wind and acoustics in his own exhausted mind. Hearing Robert's voice beg forgiveness stirred something ugly in his chest. A small, mean part of him that whispered, "Let him freeze. Let him suffer. He deserves it." "Papa," Daniel was watching him. "You okay?" Sam forced his hands to unclench. "Yeah, I'm okay. Just tired of the noise." "It's not really Uncle Robert, is it?" "No, it's not really anyone, just the storm." But it sounded so much like Robert that Sam could picture him out there standing in the killing cold, pounding on earth, and snow crying for help that wouldn't come. He felt sick with it, sick with the not knowing. What if Robert really had come looking for them? What if he was out there dying while Sam sat in here safe and warm? No. Joseph had been clear. Don't listen. Don't open the door. The storm lies. Day 3, the worst day. The wind reached its peak sometime around noon, though there was no way to tell time except by Daniel's hunger and the burn rate of their firewood. Sam estimated 75, maybe 80 miles per hour. The roar was constant, apocalyptic. Snow had completely buried the entrance. The chimney kept icing over despite Sam's efforts. Eventually, he had to extinguish the fire because smoke was backing up into the lodge, filling it with choking gray haze. The temperature inside dropped, slowly at first, then faster. 60 degrees. Mariato, 55, 52, down to the Earth's natural temperature with no fire to add warmth. Daniel huddled in both their blankets, shivering. Papa, I'm cold. I know, buddy. But remember what Joseph said? The Earth is always 52 degrees. That's not warm, but it won't kill us. We just have to wait. How long? I don't know, but we've been here 3 days. Storm can't last forever. Except Salmon wasn't sure of that. Wasn't sure of anything anymore. They sat there in the cold dark, wrapped in blankets, breathing carefully to conserve the oxygen in the sealed chamber. Sam told more stories, sang songs his mother had taught him, did everything he could think of to keep Daniel's spirits up, to keep the boy from slipping into the kind of despair that could kill as surely as cold. At some point, Sam realized Daniel had stopped shivering. That was bad. When you stopped shivering, it meant your body was giving up, conserving its core, abandoning the extremities. He pulled his son closer, opened his coat and shirt, and pressed the boy's small body against his own chest, sharing warmth, skin to skin, the way he'd learned in his own childhood. Stay with me, Sam whispered. Stay awake. Talk to me about anything. Tell me what you want to do when spring comes. Daniel's voice was thin, thready. Plant the seeds, the ones Mr. Redstone gave us. That's right. What else? Learn to hunt. Really hunt, not just snares. I want to track a deer like you did with Mr. Redstone. We'll do that, I promise. What else? I want, Daniel's voice wavered. I want Mama back. Sam's throat closed. I know, me too. But we can't have that, can we? No, we can't. So we just keep going out with her. Sam held his son tighter. Yeah, we keep going, because that's what she'd want. That's what we promised. They sat like that for hours, locked together in the cold dark, waiting for either the storm to end or the cold to take them. Sam found himself praying for the first time since Mary's funeral. Not elaborate prayers, just the same words over and over, please, please, please. He must have dozed because he woke to silence. Complete, absolute silence. The wind had stopped. The storm had ended. Morning light filtered faintly through the snow-blocked entrance. Daniel was asleep against his chest, breathing shallow but steady. Still alive. They were both still alive. Sam carefully disentangled himself and crawled to the entrance, used his hands to dig through the snow that had drifted against the high door, 4 feet of it heavy and compressed. His hands went numb quickly, but he kept digging, driven by desperate need to see outside to confirm the storm had really ended. Finally, he broke through. Cold air rushed in, so cold it burned his lungs, but the wind was gone. The snow had stopped. Above the sky was a blue so pure and brilliant it hurt to look at. They'd survived. Sam dug out the chimney, got a fire going again. The warmth flooded back into the earth lodge. Within an hour, the stone floor radiating stored heat, the curved walls reflecting and holding it. By the time Daniel woke, the temperature was back up to 65 degrees. The boy blinked in the firelight. Is it over? It's over. Daniel started crying. Not sad tears. Relief. Release. 3 days of holding everything and being brave, now pouring out in great heaving sobs. Sam held him and let him cry, his own eyes burning, but no tears coming. He was too tired for tears, too wrung out, just grateful. Grateful beyond words. That afternoon, Sam made snowshoes from bent willow and rawhide strips, following a half-remembered lesson from Joseph. They were crude things, but functional. He strapped them on and headed out to check on the old man, Daniel staying behind in the earth lodge where it was warm. The world had been transformed. Drifts 10 feet high, trees bent double under ice. Everything white and crystalline and deathly still. Sam followed the path he remembered, but the landscape was so changed he got turned around twice before finding the wickiup. It was collapsed. The frame had given way under the weight of ice and snow, the whole structure crushed flat. Sam's heart sank. He started digging, terrified of what he'd find. Joseph wasn't there. The wickiup was empty. No body, no blood, no sign of what had happened. Just a collapsed shelter and Joseph's few possessions scattered in the snow. Sam spent an hour searching the area, calling Joseph's name, looking for tracks or any indication of where the old man had gone. Nothing. Either Joseph had left before the storm hit, or he'd been buried somewhere Sam couldn't find him, or Sam didn't want to think about the other possibilities. He gathered what he could carry: Joseph's water pot, a bundle of dried sage, the buffalo robe heavy and precious, brought them back to the earth lodge like relics of someone already lost. "Did you find him?" Daniel asked when Sam returned. "No. Is he? I don't know. Maybe he went to his people's reservation. Maybe he's holed up somewhere else. We'll keep looking." But Sam's voice lacked conviction, and they both knew it. The next morning, Sam made the trek down to the valley, to the cabin that had been his, that Robert had taken. He needed to know if his brother had survived. The cabin still stood, smoke trickling from its chimney, but the woodpile that had been stacked against the north wall was completely buried under a drift that reached the eaves. Through the window, Sam could see Robert feeding furniture into the stove. Actual furniture. A chair, what looked like table legs. The man had run out of firewood and was burning his own possessions to stay alive. Sam stood at the edge of the property, visible through the window if Robert looked up. It took a few minutes, but eventually his brother did. Their eyes met across 50 feet of snow. Robert's face went through several emotions: surprise, shame, something that might have been relief. Robert came outside without a coat, moving fast before the cold could bite too deep. He stopped 10 feet from Sam, both of them standing in snow up to their knees. "You survived," Robert said. His voice was hoarse, raw. "We did." "The boy, he's fine." Robert looked at him, really looked, and Sam saw his brother taking inventory. Sam's relatively clean clothes, his healthy color, the fact that he wasn't shivering despite the cold. "How much wood did you burn?" Robert asked. "6 pieces, maybe 8. I burned," Robert's voice cracked, "half a cord in 3 days, then started on the furniture. The shed's buried. Can't get to what's left of the woodpile." Sam said nothing, just stood there, letting his presence speak for itself. "That house you built," Robert said. "The one in the hillside, it kept you warm." "Yes. Warmer than this cabin. Much warmer." Robert was quiet for a long moment. His hands were shaking, whether from cold or something else Sam couldn't tell. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller, broken. "I was wrong. About everything. About the cabin, about you, about—" He looked up at the sky, blinking rapidly. "My whole life I've been jealous of you. Father gave you the mine because you were the good son. Mary chose you because you were the better man. Everything came easy to you." "Easy?" Sam's laugh was bitter. "You think any of this was easy?" "No, I know it wasn't. That's what I'm saying." Robert met his eyes. "You lost your wife. I threw you out. You had every right to lie down and die. Instead, you built something I can't even understand. Something better than what I stole from you." Sam waited, didn't speak. "I'm asking," Robert swallowed hard, "could you teach me how to build what you built?" And there it was, the power dynamic completely inverted. The brother who'd thrown him out into the snow now begging for knowledge. Part of Sam wanted to say no, wanted to walk away and let Robert freeze in the cabin he'd stolen, wanted revenge for all of it. But he thought about Joseph, about 7 generations of seeds, about knowledge that needed to be passed on, not hoarded. And he thought about Daniel watching from somewhere, learning what kind of man his father was. "Ask Daniel," Sam said quietly. "What?" "You tell my 6-year-old son you are sorry. You get on your knees and you apologize for trying to make him a servant. If he says you can learn, I'll teach you. If he says no, you figure it out yourself." Robert's face worked, pride and shame warring. Finally, pride lost. "All right, when?" "Tomorrow, come to the hillside, bring Catherine. You'll both need to hear this." Sam walked away, leaving Robert standing in the snow, and he felt no triumph, just tired. Tired and ready to go home to his son in the warm earth lodge and the life they were building from nothing. That evening, Sam told Daniel about Robert's request. The boy was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. "Then, do you want to teach him, Papa?" I don't know. Part of me doesn't. Part of me thinks he deserves to struggle. What would Mama say? Sam smiled sadly. Your mama would say grudges are heavy things to carry, that we've got enough weight without adding more. What would Mr. Redstone say? Joseph would say knowledge shared is knowledge that survives, that holding it back hurts everyone, even the person doing the holding. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we should teach him, not because he deserves it, because it's right. Sam pulled his son close. When did you get so wise? I had a good teacher. The next day, Robert came. Catherine was with him looking nervous and ashamed. Sam made them kneel in the snow and apologized to Daniel. It was awkward and painful and sincere. Daniel accepted with a solemnity that made him seem much older than 6. Then Sam taught, explained the principles, showed them the Earth Lodge, watched Robert's face as the man realized how completely he'd underestimated his younger brother. Over the following weeks, others came. A miner named Thomas Burke, who'd heard about the Earth Lodge and wanted to learn. A widow named Ada with 2 children and no money for firewood. A German immigrant named Carl, who worked in the silver mines and was tired of freezing. Sam taught them all, not for money, for the promise that they'd teach others, that the knowledge would spread, that no one else would have to freeze because they didn't know better. Daniel helped with every lesson, soaking up information like a sponge, learning not just how to build, but how to teach. How to explain complex things simply, how to be patient with people who were slower to understand. By late February, there were 5 Earth Lodges in the valley, a small community of Earth dwellers sharing food and tools and knowledge, trading rabbits for preserves, firewood for carpentry work, creating a web of mutual support that didn't depend on money or official channels. Mr. Chen from the Mercantile started calling them the Earth People and wrote an article for the territorial newspaper. Some folks in town thought they were crazy. Others were curious. A few were outright hostile, especially Reverend Miller, who preached that living underground was an affront to God. Sam didn't care. He had Daniel. He had a home no one could take. He had purpose. In March, Joseph returned. Sam was outside the Earth Lodge working on a root cellar expansion when he looked up and saw the old man walking through the melting snow, thinner than before, moving slower, but alive. Joseph, wait, Sam dropped his shovel and ran. We thought you were dead. Almost was. Joseph accepted Sam's embrace with the awkwardness of someone unused to physical affection. Wickiup collapsed. I spent the storm with my cousin's family on the reservation, 60 miles east. Took me 3 weeks to get back. Daniel came flying out of the Earth Lodge and nearly knocked the old man over. Mr. Redstone, you came back. Joseph's weathered face cracked into a smile. Told you I was stubborn. Takes more than one storm to kill me. They brought him inside, fed him, showed him everything they'd done. The expanded chambers, the other Earth Lodges in the valley, the community forming. Joseph listened to it all, nodding occasionally, his eyes bright with something that looked like satisfaction. That evening, after Daniel had fallen asleep, Joseph and Sam sat by the fire. You did good, Joseph said. Better than I expected. I had a good teacher. You had the will to learn. That's rarer than you think. Joseph poked at the fire. I'm going back to the reservation. Permanently. My time in this valley is done. Sam's chest tightened. You're leaving. I'm old. I need to be with my people for whatever time I have left. But I wanted to see this first. Wanted to see that what I taught you would continue. He gestured at the Earth Lodge around them. This isn't just about survival anymore. It's about a different way of living. You're building something that'll outlast both of us. Because of you. Because you listened. Joseph gripped Sam's shoulder. My son William, he was taken before I could teach him. That wound never healed. But you gave me something I'd lost. The chance to be a teacher again. To pass on what my fathers taught me. You gave me purpose in my last years. You saved our lives, and you saved mine. Different kind of saving, but just as real. Joseph released his shoulder. Plant those seeds in spring. Teach Daniel everything. He's got good hands and a good heart. He'll carry this forward. I will, I promise. Joseph stayed 3 more days. Taught Daniel songs in Blackfoot. Told stories about the old times. Showed them both things about plants and animals and weather that Sam had never thought to ask. Then early one morning, he gathered his few belongings and prepared to leave. Sam and Daniel walked with him to the edge of the valley. "Will we see you again?" Daniel asked, trying not to cry. Joseph knelt, pulled the boy into a hug. "Maybe, maybe not, but you'll remember me, and you'll teach your children about the earth, and they'll teach theirs. That's how I'll live on, through you." He stood and nodded to Sam, no words needed. They understood each other. Joseph Redstone walked away into the morning mist, heading east toward the reservation and whatever remained of his life. Sam and Daniel watched until he disappeared, then turned back toward the hillside, toward home, toward the future they were building one day at a time. Spring came slow but certain. The snow melted. Creeks ran high with runoff. The earth softened. In April, Sam and Daniel planted Joseph's seeds, 20 feet of turned soil on the south-facing slope, carefully prepared and fertilized. They planted wild turnip prairie onion, sunchoke, and a dozen other varieties Sam didn't even have names for. Daniel did most of the work, his small hands gentle with the ancient seeds. "These are from 7 generations ago," Daniel said as he patted soil over the last planted row. "Think they'll still grow?" Joseph said they would. I believe him. They did grow. By June, the hillside was green with plants that had fed Joseph's people for centuries. Daniel tended them daily, watering, weeding, talking to them like they were friends. When the first turnip was ready to harvest in August, the boy brought it to Sam with reverence. "We did it, Papa. We grew Mr. Redstone's seeds." "We did. And next year we'll plant the seeds from these plants. And the year after that, as long as we're here." Thomas Burke became Sam's closest friend. The miner understood earth and stone in ways the other students didn't, and he and Sam would spend hours discussing ventilation systems, drainage patterns, structural integrity. By summer's end, Thomas had built an earth lodge 100 yards from Sam's, and the two families shared meals and stories and slowly became family. Ada's children played with Daniel, taught him games Sam had never learned, made the lonely boy less lonely. Robert finished his earth lodge in October and promptly sold the cabin he'd stolen. The money paid off his debts and gave him a fresh start. He and Sam would never be close, the wounds too deep, but they were civil, occasionally helpful. Something like brothers again, if not quite what they'd been. By 1890, there were 12 earth lodges in the valley, a community bound not by blood or law, but by shared knowledge and mutual respect. They called themselves the Earth People, wore the name with pride despite the mockery from town. Daniel grew. By age 9, he could build a fire in any weather track, a deer through 3 miles of forest, identify every edible plant in the territory. By 12, he was teaching younger children what Sam had taught him, the knowledge flowing outward in ripples. In 1895, a girl named Emma Clark moved to the valley with her family. 15 years old, smart and curious and unimpressed by the fact that most of the community lived underground. She asked Daniel to show her his earth lodge. He did, stuttering and nervous. She said it was the most interesting thing she'd ever seen. They were married 4 years later, built their own earth lodge 200 yards from Sam's. Different design incorporating improvements, Daniel had thought of better ventilation and in larger windows. Sam supervised the build with pride that threatened to choke him. In 1901, Daniel and Emma had their first child, a son. They named him Joseph. Sam held his grandson for the first time and felt the weight of everything that had led to this moment. Mary dying, Robert's betrayal, the night in the snow when he'd been ready to give up, Joseph Redstone appearing like fate made flesh, the storm, the struggle, the slow building of something that mattered. "His name is Joseph," Sam asked, voice thick. "After the man who saved you and Papa," Daniel said. "After the man who taught us to live with the earth instead of against it." Sam looked down at the infant in his arms, saw Mary in the shape of his nose, saw himself in the set of his jaw, saw Joseph Redstone in the dark eyes that watched him with ancient awareness. "Hello, Joseph," he whispered. "You've got a lot to live up to, but I think you'll manage." Over the next 6 years, 3 more grandchildren came. Mary named for the grandmother she'd never know. Thomas after Sam's friend and Daniel's mentor. Sarah just because Daniel liked the name. Sam taught them all how to read earth, how to build with their hands, how to plant and harvest and preserve, how to survive and thrive in country that killed the unprepared. In 1907, on a clear spring morning, Sam watched his oldest grandson, 6-year-old Joseph, plant seeds saved from the original stock, Joseph Redstone had given them 20 years earlier. The boy's hands moved with the same care. Daniel's had the same reverence for the 7 generations that had preserved these plants. Daniel stood beside Sam, both of them watching the boy work. "You think Joseph Redstone knew," Daniel asked, "that it would come to this?" "I think he hoped. That's why he gave us the seeds. Why he taught us. Hoped that the knowledge would survive him." It did more than survive. It grew. Sam nodded. Around them, the valley held 15 earth lodges now. 60 people living in harmony with the land, burning a fraction of the wood their neighbors used, producing food that fed families through long winters, creating a way of life that didn't take more than it gave back. "Your mother would be proud," Sam said quietly, "of you, of this, of everything we built." "You built it, Papa. You and Mr. Redstone." "No, we started it, but you carried it forward. That's the harder part. Anyone can start something. Making it last, making it grow, that takes real strength." They stood there in comfortable silence, watching young Joseph plant the last of the seeds. The boy looked up, dirt on his face, grinning. "Grandpa, come see, I did the whole row myself." Sam walked over, inspected the work. Straight line, good spacing, perfect depth. "That's fine work, Joseph. Your great-grandfather would be proud." "The one I'm named after, but that's right. Tell me the story again, about the storm and the Earth Lodge and how you survived." Sam settled onto the ground, Daniel joining him, and young Joseph sat between them. Around them, the valley stretched green and alive under spring sun. The Earth Lodges invisible from a distance, hidden in hillsides, part of the land itself. And Sam told the story. He'd told it hundreds of times by now to students and grandchildren and anyone who asked. About loss and desperation. About Joseph Redstone appearing from the snow. About building with earth instead of wood. About the storm that tried to kill them and failed. About learning that the strongest things aren't always the most visible. That sometimes survival means going underground, becoming part of the land, letting the world think you've disappeared when really you've just found a better way to live. Young Joseph listened with the intensity children reserve for stories that matter. When Sam finished, the boy was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Will you teach me everything for there, Mr. Redstone taught you?" "Everything I know, and then some." "Promise, I promise." The boy smiled and ran off to play, leaving Sam and Daniel sitting in the dirt. Sam was 52 now, his hair going gray, his hands stiff with arthritis on cold mornings, but he felt stronger than he had at 32. Richer in every way that mattered. "You did good, Papa," Daniel said. "You kept us alive when anyone else would have given up. You built something that'll outlast both of us." "We built it, all of us. Joseph, you, me, Thomas, Ada, everyone who learned and taught and kept it going." Sam looked at his son. "That's the real legacy. Not the earth lodges, the knowledge, the community, the understanding that we're strongest when we work with the land instead of against it." They sat together until the sun started to sink, father and son watching the next generation play and learn and grow. Behind them, invisible in its hillside, the first Earth Lodge stood as solid as the day Sam had carved it from Livingstone. In front of them, young Joseph laughed and planted and prepared to carry everything forward into a future neither Sam nor Daniel would see. The earth remembered, the earth held them, and the earth would be there long after their names were forgotten, keeping safe the people who'd learned to ask instead of take, to listen instead of demand, to build with instead of against. That was enough. That was everything. That was the legacy Sam Whitfield left behind.